Today on TimesCast.
The complaint describes how a group of crime fighters took to moonlighting as criminals, how a gang of police officers who should have been keeping guns off the street instead smuggled 20 firearms into the city.
8 New York City police officers are arrested for gun trafficking. European Union finance ministers abruptly cancel a Wednesday meeting. And the op-ed columnist Nicholas D. Kristof on Tunisia's elections.
This is William Rashbaum reporting for the New York Times. 8 current and former New York Police Department officers were arrested early Tuesday on federal charges, including conspiring to distribute firearms and conspiracy to smuggle cigarettes.
Good afternoon.
The charges allege that the officers were involved in illegally transporting more than a dozen handguns, as well as M16 assault rifles and shotguns, into the city.
These goods were not, in fact, stolen. They were supplied by an undercover officer working under the direction and supervision of the FBI in close coordination with the NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau.
The gun trafficking allegations strike at the heart of one of the New York Police Department's most hard-fought and robust initiatives, and one that has been a central theme of the administration of Mayor Michael R. Bloomberg, getting guns off the streets of New York City. The arrests come at a difficult time for the department. It is already besieged by corruption allegations large and small, including a case in which 16 officers are expected to face charges in the coming days in a ticket-fixing scandal in the Bronx.
I don't believe corruption is on the rise. We have over 1,000 people in the department focused on internal investigations. That's as many people as we devote to counterterrorism.
In New York City history, police scandals have come in 20-year cycles. In 1992, a large group of officers was charged with running drugs and protecting drug dealers, a case that ultimately prompted an independent commission to look at how the department polices itself. Today's arrests, coming on the heels of a number of cases over the last few months, bring that question to the fore once again.
European Union finance ministers abruptly canceled a Wednesday meeting, causing stock markets in the U.S. and Europe to drop.
A wrench has been thrown into the latest efforts to resolve the European debt crisis. There's speculation on why the meeting was canceled. One is that Poland is new to the presidency of this group, and it had scheduled a meeting that it could no longer hold. But the greater concern is that actually the private holders of the debt, the sovereign debt of Greece in particular, do not want to take a steep loss on those bonds. They had already agreed to 20 cents on the dollar, and now European leaders are pushing them to actually take 40 to 60 cents on the dollar. That could be one of the sticking points here. At the same time, investors are concerned that Italy will not be able to pay back some of the debts that it has. They need really steep budget cuts, and the question is whether or not Berlusconi can bring those about. Tomorrow, while the finance ministers won't meet, the leaders of the European Union will. And the question is whether or not they can still bring about this 4-point plan of a bailout, a fix for Greece, bank capitalization, and also plans for growth. The markets will be waiting.
And Tunisia's first free election is expected to deliver big wins for the nation's moderate Islamic party.
Some Americans are going to hear the news about an Islamic party doing so well in the Tunisian elections, the first in the post-Arab Spring period in the Arab world, and they're going to be really alarmed. There are a few reasons why I think we shouldn't be quite so agitated. First of all, the Ennahda party that did so well in Tunisia is one of the more modern, forward-looking Islamic parties in the region. Some other countries have Islamist parties that truly are pretty radical. In the case of Tunisia, moderation is just deeply imbued in the country. It's also one of the most educated countries, one of those where girls are particularly well educated, where women are involved in the economy. And I think it's much harder to imagine a Islamist party like Ennahda taking the country in a truly radical direction than it might be in some other countries. Second, I think it's quite understandable that many Tunisians and other people in these Arab Spring countries would be supporting an Islamist party because, frankly, in many of these countries, including Tunisia, it was the Islamists who were often the most courageous in fighting dictators. They were the ones who stood up, who denounced corruption, and who paid a brutal price for their courage. Until now, Islamist parties have been in the great position where they can criticize corruption, criticize oppression, but they don't actually have to deliver services. And it may well prove to be a lot harder to deliver water hookups, electricity hookups in slums than it is to denounce the incompetence of the previous regime. So if Ennahda cannot make services improve, then it's going to face accountability from voters the next time around. That is what democracy is all about.